Okay, so we have a new episode of Legends and Leaders, and it's great to have Aaron here. So, Aaron, you're somebody that has kind of been in so many different roles, and you've been very versatile with that. You created your own startup that has become a multi-billion-dollar business for Home Depot. You were the CTO of Home Depot and really scaled it up over there. You were early on a founding engineer of Google Video. You helped create the monetization for YouTube, and YouTube monetization has changed so many creators' lives. And now you have a new startup that's Smith.ai that's focusing on becoming this like virtual assistant and really helping with sales for startups and smaller companies throughout the world. And there's a lot of them that need that. You guys have already done over 1 million calls you've answered, and it's growing, quite nicely. So I'm excited to have you here and to get into your story.
Yeah, like Ben, good morning. I'm so excited to be here and Happy New Year. And just a minor correction, we've done actually more than 10 million calls and 10 million chats.
1 million.
So it is a pretty good scale. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Good to know. So where did your passion, Aaron, for technology and even like business leadership, like where did that come from? Were you always kind of into tech? And did you think when you were young you would become an entrepreneur and build your own business? Like how did this passion begin?
Yeah, it was actually quite an interesting story. So I love computer graphics. I love playing video games when I was young, and then I thought like I'm going to learn about computer graphics. So and before I joined Princeton, not joined Princeton, but I attended Princeton. I was an undergrad at Cambridge in UK, and I was tinkering with like neural network. I was building my like undergrad thesis on like building a kind of like a postal recognition kind of like OCR software. And then I really got into the graphics. I thought my dream company was SGI, like Silicon Graphics.
Yeah.
I thought when I graduated, I'm going to join the company. And the funny story is, I almost joined Blizzard to build a game called World of Warcraft. If you play like WoW, it's really amazing, and I missed that opportunity. And I almost joined Nvidia, and people say, "Look, I mean, how big was the market, right? I mean, like video gamers, how many like graphics cards they were gonna buy?" So I end up landing in Google, which had the same headquarter as SGI, and the rest was history. When I first joined the Google, like, and there was like Larry and Sergey and Susan and Marissa Meyer, and they were like, "Okay, we did the web search, right? We already indexed the entire web. What's the next thing?" They said, "Okay, we can do images." So they got image search, and then the next thing is like, "What about video, right? I mean, we can also do video." So that was like back in, I would say, when I first joined the Google, it was early 2004, and Google had about 2,000 employees, incredibly entrepreneurial, and the 20% project was real. A lot of people were kind of building their own thing, kind of like 1 day per week. And I was one of the first two engineers on Google Video. And at that time, like we start indexing and storing about like kind of terabytes per day of content. And back in that day, like that was almost like 20 years ago, it was a huge number. Nowadays, you can go to Best Buy and you can buy a terabyte drive for like probably less than $100. But back then, it was a large scale. I work on the storage, I work on the indexing, I work on the search, I work on like the front end, the back end, kind of like really like going through the founded type of story, right? You have an idea, you have the backing of Google, and you just want to build something new.
hmm So how did you kind of get involved with Google Video? Was it just like a project that was assigned to you, or was it your own project? And what did you
Oh,
think it was possible?
it was something that like the management team was really excited about, and they said, "Look, I mean, like we got this new idea, and we just got a new engineer who just came out of school, so let's put him on the project." So I was like one of the two lead engineers building that, and then before you know it, the team grew to like 10, 15, 20. Like before we know it, like we have like 50 people on the team, and it was really a big undertaking. And back then, the biggest like challenge was like getting the content on the internet, indexing it, making sure the bandwidth and the viewing experience was like really ideal. So there was a lot of video compression, a lot of like MPEG 4, like that was like back in the early days. Yeah. And of
Mhm.
course, like around the same time, YouTube came along, and like it they really grew in popularity, and before you know it, like Google acquired the YouTube in 2006, and I also joined the team. And you say, okay, like they already have someone working on all the front end, the web, and what about monetization? Like I understood the system well, about the search, indexing, and the Google AdWords and the AdSense. So it was kind of a fairly natural progression for me to start thinking about, hey, how can we monetize the content? We have a lot of creatives, they produce a lot of amazing content, but you need someone has to pay them to continue to produce the content. Like, how do you figure that out? And that was,
Mm.
I would say, kind of my early beginning of start to think about like a founder.
Mhm. So you figured out like how to do YouTube monetization based on search and search traffic and do it really accurately. Like what went into determining that? Like how much of a process was it to really do YouTube ads correctly?
Yeah, we were looking at many different factors. In fact, when I say we, I mean back in the days, there was like Google and YouTube. Like they knew a lot about like what videos people watched. They know how many minutes you have watched. They know which part of the video you watched, and if you can do speech to text, you can actually extract the content about the video. So there's a
Mhm.
lot of metadata about the videos that you're watching. And one of the things like major traffic source like back in the days was called a related video, meaning like they kind of know because you're interested in watching certain type of videos, then maybe other things that are like interesting to you. And also think about things like people who are interested in watching X, they're also interested in watching Y. So they show you the Y, right? They show you the related side. So it's really about keeping people to keep watching more and more interesting videos. And then we figure out also the demographics. So we start kind of matching kind of like the type of content and kind of your age, your location, your geography, and then try to share through some of the interesting advertisements that might be like relevant to what you're watching. And we have tested like many different kind of like video formats, like kind of like the pre-video, the interstitials, the post-video, the text overlay on top of the video, the image overlay. Like if you, I don't know if you remember, like early on, YouTube had a very simple advertising program. I believe they were called the homepage takeover. So every day they will sell to one advertiser, right, and say,
Mhm.
okay, put up your banner on the homepage, and I don't know how much they pay, probably hundreds of thousands of dollars, or maybe $1 million, depending on the traffic. And it's really a very simple form of advertising, right? You put the
Mhm.
banner on the homepage and that's it. There's no targeting, there's no retargeting, there's no demographics targeting, there's no interest targeting. So it's really simple. And so we took that like from that kind of like I would say the simple form into something like a lot more interesting. And then from there, we also expanded into our publishing network, meaning people who embed the Google AdSense, they can also make a cut of the revenue, like based on the
Mhm.
videos that they embed on their websites.
Did you think when you were creating, you're working with and helping to create like the YouTube monetization and Google Video, did you think that these technologies would be really disruptive? Like, what did you think the potential was at the time?
I think the technology was disruptive in the first place because think about like you don't have to like sit in front of the TV to watch the video. I think around that time there was also TiVo, right? And nowadays
Mhm.
like people really take it for granted because everything is on demand, everything is streaming. But back then it was groundbreaking. The fact that you can catch up on any episode and any time that you like to watch, you can pause, you can play faster, you can play slower. It was
Mhm.
groundbreaking. And when you look at the consumption and the traction, how many people actually joined like Google Video and YouTube, how much video do they consume? And even today, you see like TikTok is very popular, the short form videos or Instagram stories. It really shows that there was a huge appetite for the type of the content and the technology underlying it to serve it. The rest is just to figure out the economics on how to make it work so that you create this kind of flywheel where when you have more content, you have monetization that drive more creators to create more interesting contents.
Mhm. So then you decided that you were going to build your own company. So Redbeacon came about, and I think you were doing that from 2008 to 2015. Eventually, it
Yeah.
was acquired by Home Depot. You became CTO of Home Depot. How significant was it early on winning TechCrunch in 2009? You know, and what was really like the biggest kind of like breakthrough that you had early on with Redbeacon that helped propel it to really scale and eventually be acquired?
Yeah, I think it was really important that like TechCrunch was a huge I would say a stepping stone and also a inflection point, because I said when I joined Google it was 2004. When I left Google it was around 2008, and Google grew from like 2,000 employees to 20,000, like 10x,
Huh.
and it was huge, right? And and I was like, wow, I mean, it's becoming a really big organization. It's difficult to innovate. It's difficult to build new products, and that's why I left in 2008 with the other two ex-Googlers. And it just so happened the month that I left was also the financial crisis, Lehman Brothers, like the
Uh,
credit score, and that was the whole. I think Sequoia actually sent out the memo and say, "Hey guys, there's no more money for any of the startups. We are done." And that was the kind of the nuclear winter during that whole year. And it turns out to be a good thing because we were heads down, we were bootstrapping the company, and by the time we launched in 2009, we there were no competitors because in the past year there were no startup being funded by any of the VCs. So when we got to the tech crunch, like we said, wow, this is amazing, right? Because there's no very few other companies. And we were actually at the forefront of thinking about the marketplace. I think that generated the whole kind of like series of other startups on thinking about how can you capture the two-sided marketplace. And because once you have the two-sided marketplace, like eBay is a great example, right? And like then you have Yahoo Auction and Amazon and other companies that came along. It wasn't really the technology that drive or that drove the innovation. It was the two-sided marketplace, because when you have the buyer,
uh,
you have the seller. Whenever you have more seller, you have more buyer. When you have more buyer, you have more seller. It just keeps snowballing, and it's almost unstoppable, right? I mean, when you build up that kind of like virality, it's almost impossible. Even if you came in with the exact same product with the exact same features, it's very hard to displace the existing incumbent. So we saw that opportunity, and back then, like it was very difficult to find a uh, a professional to do your home. Like you have to go to like Yelp or Yellow Pages. You have to call around. Like sometimes when you call them, they don't pick up the phone. You left a voicemail, they may or may not get
uh,
back to you. It's very clunky, right? I mean, like there were no pricing transparency. You have no idea how much the project will cost you. So we eliminate all this. We build a platform where the professional can sign up, build a profile. The homeowners or whoever that wanted to do a project, they can sign up, they can submit a job, and it blasts out to the nearby providers. And they say, wow, I mean, this project is for me. They come in, they put in the project estimate, they put in some kind of comments and say, oh, this project is going to take like 2 to 3 weeks. What is your timeline? And we build that connection. And it just so happened that around the same time, Home Depot was thinking about like building that marketplace. And if you think about it,
uh,
it's no surprises because Home Depot had, I think now has more, 2,000 stores like US, Canada, Mexico. And every day you have the two-sided marketplace walk into the store. You have the homeowners walking into the store. You have the pros walking into the store. They just don't get connected. They go to different aisles, right? But they're in the same place at the same time. And yet they're not being connected. So that was one of the reasons Home Depot wanted to solve the problem. Another thing is about the pro loyalty, right? Because the pro, they always have a choice whether they go to Home Depot or Lowe's or Ace Hardware or any kind of local hardware store. Now they have to say, why do I want to stay in Home Depot? Well, because not only do Home Depot provide the widest and the cheapest selection, they're also giving them jobs, right? If you think about the power of like staying on the platform where you get the jobs, you buy the material, you get the discounts, you get more jobs, right? As you
uh,
spend more, you get more jobs, and you become the preferred provider. And Home Depot became the matchmaker that helps this business to thrive. And that was really one of the most exciting idea when we heard about the proposal, because like we could raise more money, but the money doesn't solve our distribution problem, right? Which is actually the most important thing for a startup. Like who can help you to get your product onto the hands of the customers. And there was like no competition than Home Depot. They got a brand. They've been around for decades. They have like 2,000 distribution centers or stores. And widely recognized. People know about them, right? And when we call people up,
Mhm.
they say, "Yeah, we're from Home Depot." Yep, they know. We know you. Yeah.
So you built a relationship with the former chairman, Frank Blake.
Mhm.
How impactful was that on your approaches now to just business or even just the way you conduct yourself? Like, what did you learn most from Frank?
Oh, I mean, it is unbelievable. Like, not only Frank is an amazing business leader, his advice and guidance was so instrumental to how we think about Redbeacon, right? If you think about Home Depot being an organization with 400,000 associates, huge company, right? And doing like probably hundreds of billions of dollars, right? Such a massive organization. When you try to introduce a new concept, even though it makes total sense, there's a lot of like pushback and say, hey, is this really the number one thing that we have to do? Like, what about my other 15 other projects, right? Because once you put in a project and you want to take it to the nationwide level, you are competing with the other projects. So that's number one. You need to be a very good, I wouldn't call it a salesperson, but like be able to inspire other people to think like you, inspire other people to say, wow, that's really the most exciting thing that we got to do for the next 5 years. That's number one. Number two, communications takes time and it takes multiple repeated iterations. Like, let's say you're a startup, you're building something really awesome. You will spend a lot of time educating your customers. Number one, why this is something that you have to pay attention on, because every day we got bombarded with so many like AI ideas. Why this is critical to your business. Why do we need to talk about it, and why do we need to think about deploying it in your organization? Like, all these stuff is like really a good exercise. The third thing about Frank is like he is so, I mean, even though he runs a huge organization, he knows every single bit of the details about the business, and details matter. Like, you may say, I have a big idea. Like, I mean, you probably talk to a lot of startup founders. I have a big idea, but I'm not going to tell you because we're in stealth mode. That's probably the worst thing that you could do, because by talking about your idea to as many people, people will give you like, have you thought about this? Like, would it be deployable? Right? I mean, like, this is a great idea, but what does it take to go from 0 to 1? What does it take for people to say, yep, this is something we like? But boy, I mean, it takes a team to implement. It takes a team to change the existing workflow. The friction of deployment, the pushback from the other competing ideas is equally important. I think that is something that most of the entrepreneurs may not appreciate. I think these are just a tiny little bit of like what I learned from Frank, and he's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds like you learned a lot. So you eventually went on, and now you have a new company, Smithai, and you're focusing on this kind of virtual receptionist. I mean, there's been some virtual receptionists in the past. Sometimes they don't always get what you're saying right. It can be quite frustrating for people at times. You have like a different approach to that. So, what do you aspire to really do now with Smithai? Like, what problem, do you really, how do you intend to solve this virtual receptionist problem? And what do you see the long-term potential of it as?
Actually, it also go like the root of the idea actually went back to Redbeacon and the Home Depot days. So we spend a lot of time talking to the pros and the homeowners, and the pros always say, "Look, Aaron, I just don't have the time, right? I'm wearing multiple hats. I'm the store owner. I'm the business owner. I am the one picking up the phone call. I'm the one going up to the roof or going down to the crawl space to do the work. When people call me or text me, I could be driving, right? I spend a lot of time driving. They just don't have the time to build the customer relationship. They just don't have the time, the people, the bandwidth, or the technology to be able to respond to people right away. And we find out that the number one factor for business to win the kind of the clients is the responsiveness. So think about, you have a project, you need to remodel your kitchen, like $5,000, $10,000. You start calling people around. Who is going to get your business is the first one that can pick up the phone, give you the confidence that they can do the job, set the timeline, set up the appointment. That is the business that will get you, right? Not the ones that you have to play phone tag, you have to call them like 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. Nowadays, people don't have the patience. They want instant gratification. They want to say, hey, I want to get this done. I want to check it off my to-do list. So whoever that can provide 24/7 omni-channel like phone call, whether they be web chat, SMS, or Facebook Messenger, are the business that are going to win. So from that point, we recognize that there was just no good solution. As you mentioned, there were many ways that people can do that. They probably hire someone from offshore, and the quality was bad. You may have to repeat the things many times, or they have to hire someone in-house, which is expensive because the minimum wage, the workers' comp, and like a lot of the overhead is very, very high for the small businesses. And even so, during the pandemics, right? And that was the time where we got the most significant growth because people say, look, it's a tough economy and we're not working in the same office. So we want to do more with less. And they want to provide that kind of like spontaneous communications to the customers. And there's no better way to use a service like Smithai because like we are always on, we're 24/7, 365. We cover all the channels. And more importantly, we're using AI to basically guide our human agents to tell them like what to do, what to say, what questions to ask, how to qualify, book the appointment, collect the upfront deposit. So not only we are the front desk for these businesses, we're also the back office. We connect to the CRM, we collect the payment, we book appointment, we do everything for them. So all they need to do is to look at the calendar and say, hey, yeah, today I need to go to this place to do this project and I already got the deposit. Wonderful, right? I mean, they just need to show up and do the work and we handle the rest. And really the AI was the game changer because traditionally it's very difficult to train like the agents to be familiar with your business within, I would say, just a few seconds from the moment the call rang to the moment you pick up the phone, right? You have to be very familiar with the business, understanding what they need, what they require, and we build the entire system from the ground up and we own the entire stack.
Mhm. How difficult was it to build this system? Because like we've seen types of like I don't know like semi AI systems that don't fully answer the questions well, or you have to repeat yourself a couple of times. And your system is much more accurate than that, and more like as closer to human as can be. How what went into creating that, and what was the first type of version of it before you really raised this recent round?
Yeah. So the first one that we built was like all human, right? I mean, we're training the agents, we're learning the system. Of course, we we can do a lot of technology work that can pull up all the information about the business at the fingertips so they don't have to switch around, look for the information. So that's the first version. The second one was the fact that we say, wait a minute, like we actually know a lot about the business. We can actually guide the agents, right? Now, one of the like you probably talked to a lot of the AI startups. The two things about AI that are the biggest challenge for a real-time voice application. So number one is the latency. You don't want the caller to be hanging there and waiting for the AI to respond, right? Number two, hallucinations. You don't want the AI to say the wrong things, right? You don't want them to disqualify a legitimate caller, and you also don't want them to accept a caller that should be disqualified. So the way that we basically implement is to combine the AI with the human intelligence. So the AI is serving like a co-pilot for the agents. They're helping the agents to be a lot more productive. They are helping the agents to be like handling every single call correctly. Our correctness is 99.8%. We almost don't make mistakes at all because the
Wow.
AI is guiding our agents on what to do and what to say, like a co-pilot. It's more like when you have a co-pilot, it's more like someone that can whisper into your ear and tell you what to do, but you are still the one like making the judgment call, right? If the AI is like, hey, I feel a little bit odd, this is kind of a little bit not what I expected, the human can make the human kind of the judgment call for that. And I think that is probably the best that we can do. Now, AI is going to improve at an exponential rate in the next like 3 to 5 years. And the speech to text, text to speech is going to be more and more real time. The natural language understanding is going to be more and more powerful. They're going to reduce the hallucination like more and more. But at this very moment, we believe um, even if the AI is doing or getting 90% right and 10% wrong, it's still not great because that means 1 out of 10 calls, they're making the wrong decision or they're telling the wrong information. Now, if you're a business owner, you cannot afford that. You cannot afford to say 1 out of 10 times the AI is going to do the wrong thing. So that's why we still need a human to do it, but we can turbocharge the human agents to be extremely productive.
So, just one of the last questions that I have. So, you've been an angel investor, Aaron, in many different companies. You
Mhm.
got early on in NerdWallet, that did well. You were early on in Authy, which was acquired by Twilio. What do you generally look for in an early stage company before you invest in it? What are some of the telltale like signs or criteria that you think generally will lead to a success?
Yeah, I would say I look for companies that are really passionate about solving one or two problems, ideally one, because you can't do like you don't have enough time and bandwidth and the attention to solve multiple problems. But you got to have the vision. You say, hey, if I solve this, boy, it is going to solve a whole set of other problems. And you need to understand the business really well. And some of the best founders, like they just first principle thinker, right? They think about, okay, why is this wrong? How come other people are not doing it? And if we can solve this thing right, like what is the impact? So I was also the early investor in MongoDB. Like I actually attended multiple of the user developer conference. I was there, right?
Huh.
And when I look at the developers, they were ecstatic. They were so passionate, right, about the technology. Like, we need to get rid of SQL. They are like not flexible. I need to have the schemaless kind of like, I need to build JSON as my schema and all this stuff. Like, people are so excited when you see that passion. It was like off the chart. And you know, this company was onto something. Now, back then, the thing I didn't know, that's why angel investing is, I can tell you my betting average is 50-50, meaning 50% of my investment goes to IPO or like exit, and the other 50% like went down to zero. And MongoDB were not able to figure out back then, almost 10 years ago, how they could monetize. They have a lot of love from the developers, but they couldn't figure out how to monetize a open source software. And and I said, well, but that is not really the biggest problem, because if you have so much passion from the developer, you will figure that out. It's a matter of time, right? And of course, they figure that out, and they become one of the biggest, like, most amazing software company that many of the other companies are depending on. So that's what I'm looking for: someone who have a big vision, someone who can also can execute. As I keep saying, ideas are cheap. I can tell you like 10 ideas, and I said, feel free to go ahead and implement them, because every single one is such a big challenge to execute, right? You need to get everything right. And most of the times, you cannot make too many mistakes.
So look, Aaron, I think that's all the questions that I had, and I appreciate you coming on. You have quite an interesting story, and we're early on in so many different like monumental projects, whether it's Google Video and YouTube ads, and to your company, Redbeacon, that has become this platform that's been used by so many people and helped facilitate so many different jobs, and now solving another problem that's a real world issue that's going to help a lot of different smaller companies be able to close more sales and hopefully have their businesses flourish. I'm excited to see what you can continue to do in this direction, because these are important things to work on. And I wish you much success. Appreciate you coming
Yeah,
on.
thank you so much. I really appreciate that.